Prologue. The Final Game. On the first floor of the old manor house, only a single candle remained alight. Lady Evelyn Rosemond sat upon the windowsill. A book rested open across her knees, though she was not reading. The muted crackle of the fire and the steady ticking of the grandfather clock were the only sounds in the vast, otherwise silent house. Beyond the window, the wind moved restlessly through the ancient oaks. Evelyn ran one hand gently over the velvet-soft fur of her dog, whose head lay upon her lap, and gazed into the darkness. She was waiting, just as she had waited through so many nights before. She did not know where her father was. She knew only that the nights were growing longer. Far beneath the respectable streets of the city, another candle burned. The gaming salon. A faint clink disturbed the silence, almost too quiet to hear, like the final protest of a life already losing its grip. Then came a scrape, metal against wood, heavy, weary. Gold coins rolled across the green felt. They trembled briefly, as though rebelling against their fate. It made no difference. A hand reached for a goblet. Heavy rings covered its trembling fingers, rings that had once proclaimed wealth and influence. Now they seemed little more than a cruel mockery. The wine inside the goblet was deep red. It spilled over the rim as the hand lifted it. Then someone laughed. Lord Edgar Rosemond. The sound was coarse, hollow, and far too loud for the silent room. It was the laughter of a man who had long since crossed the point at which anything could still end well. He was drunk. Again. Perhaps he had been drinking for days. "Stake everything," he slurred. And yet, behind the haze in his eyes, something strange still burned. "Everything I have." The men seated around the table exchanged uneasy glances. Wealthy men, powerful men, men who were ordinarily composed and unreadable. But now there were furrowed brows. There was hesitation. "Everything?" one of them asked quietly. Edgar wiped his mouth with his sleeve. His eyes were sunken and bloodshot, but somewhere within them lingered a final spark of defiance, a shadow of the man he had once been. Once, he had been a lord of an ancient and respected house. He had possessed a grand estate, fine horses, carriages, gold enough to ensure that the Rosemond name opened doors wherever it was spoken. He had possessed dignity, purpose, and a beautiful, intelligent wife. Then his lady had died. Something inside Edgar had broken in silence. No one had noticed. No one except Edgar himself, and the wine. After her death, he began to drink. Then he began to gamble. And then he began to lose. First the gold, then the jewels, the horses, the carriages. Piece by piece, everything disappeared. All that remained was this chair, this night, and one final stake. The master of the game leaned slightly forward. His voice was calm, almost casual. "What do you offer, Lord Rosemond?" Edgar slowly raised his head. Weariness clouded his eyes, while a bitter, joyless smile touched his lips. "My daughter." Silence. No whispers, no breath. Only the faint crackling of the candles. A chair was violently thrust back. One of the dukes at the table rose to his feet and stared at Edgar in horror. "Damn you, Edgar! You have completely lost your mind!" "How unfortunate," a voice replied from the shadows. Deep, calm, entirely undisturbed, and courteous to the bone. "Sit down, Your Grace." The glowing tip of a cigar flared in the darkness. A thin ring of smoke drifted upward and slowly dissolved. Then the speaker stepped into the candlelight. Gerald Montcroix, the Duke of Westmoret. He was a man who never asked whether something was right, only whether it might prove useful. He wore his dark coat like armor. His expression remained perfectly still, and his eyes held the lifeless chill of winter glass. He inclined his head by the smallest degree. "An unusual stake, Lord Rosemond." Edgar sank heavily against the back of his chair. His voice had gone numb. "She causes no trouble. She knows when to remain silent. Useful in a household." He lifted his wine with an unsteady hand. "And useful for producing heirs." The Duke raised one eyebrow. He was not shocked. If anything, he regarded the matter with the distant interest of a collector examining a newly discovered work of art. "And yet," he said, his voice edged with velvet, "I have heard that she is a rather accomplished young lady." Edgar gave another short, empty laugh. "Who cares what she is, so long as she obeys?" The Duke approached the table. Without taking his eyes from Edgar, he gave the master of the game a single, measured nod. The game began. The master slid the leather dice cup across the green felt. Edgar reached for it. The dice rattled inside his trembling hand before he cast them onto the wooden tray. They struck the surface, turned, and settled. A low throw. A murmur moved through the room. The Duke accepted the cup. There was no hesitation, no visible emotion. He cast the dice. They leapt across the wood, spun one final time, and came to rest. Edgar stared down at them. The final trace of color drained from his face. The Duke did not even smile. A short while later, a document lay before Lord Rosemond. The master of the game placed an inkwell beside it and offered him a quill. The scratching of the nib against the paper cut through the silence. Fresh ink gleamed beneath the candlelight. And so, a fate was decided. Not by the edge of a sword, not by the judgment of a court, but by a sentence, a sheet of paper, and a signature. A young woman had been wagered like a coin. Her life sold to fill a void that no amount of gold could ever mend. The final game, lost. Chapter 1. The Arrival. The rain fell like a punishment, not violently, but relentlessly, as though the heavens had long since finished grieving and had simply grown tired. Each drop struck heavily against the carriage's leather roof, a dull, steady heartbeat in the darkness. Beneath the iron-rimmed wheels, the water-logged earth groaned, as though the ground itself refused to carry her any farther along this road. Inside the carriage, she sat, motionless. Lady Evelyn Rosemond. Her back was perfectly straight, just as she had been taught from her earliest childhood. The posture of a lady, composed, immaculate. Only her tightly clasped hands revealed how much strength that composure demanded of her. Her gaze rested upon the rain-streaked window, though she saw nothing beyond it. Outside, there was only darkness. Whenever the cold flash of lightning tore through the night, the bare skeletons of ancient oaks appeared for an instant. Broken fences, the shadowed outlines of an unfamiliar world. Evelyn did not cry. She would not permit herself tears. Her self-control held back the pain like a dam. But the memories came regardless, unstoppable, like cold mist seeping through every crack. She remembered her mother's laughter, warm, bright, safe. An echo from a time when walls had offered protection and words had still carried meaning. Eve, never forget who you are. Then came the memory of velvet soft fur beneath her fingers, of the familiar head that had rested in her lap only the evening before. Since her mother's death, he had been Evelyn's only friend, the last remnant of her family. She could still see his loyal, questioning eyes as her father dragged her away from him. "Stop dreaming, Evelyn. You are no longer a little girl. You are a woman, and now you must marry. Your life no longer belongs to you." He had not even allowed her to bring her final companion with her. A crash of thunder shook the carriage. For the briefest moment, Evelyn closed her eyes, her lips pressed tightly together. The turning of the wheels began to slow. The wooden frame groaned as the carriage rolled onto wet gravel and came to a halt. A heavy, expectant silence filled the confined space. Then a rough, clipped voice came from outside. "We have arrived." The carriage door opened. Rain and bitter cold rushed inside. A footman stood before her in the downpour. His coat was soaked through, and his face bore the marks of a man shaped by years of silence. He inclined his head, not deeply, not respectfully, merely out of habit. "Lady Evelyn Rosemond?" She offered no reply, only the smallest, almost imperceptible tilt of her chin. "His Grace is expecting you." Evelyn stepped down from the carriage. The hem of her dark gown immediately drank in the mud and rainwater. Then she raised her eyes. There it stood. Not a home, not a sanctuary. A colossal structure of dark stone rose against the night sky like an impenetrable black wall. Its tall, latticed windows gleamed like blind and judging eyes. The immense oak doors remained closed, like a mouth refusing to speak. Westmoret Manor, the ancestral seat of House Monquois, a place that looked as though sunlight had never touched it, an estate that offered nothing and demanded everything. Lady Evelyn drew the cold night air into her lungs. The gentle patter of rain against the gravel was the only sound. Here, the life she had known came to an end. Behind her, the carriage began to move again. The rattle of its wheels slowly faded until even that final, familiar sound was swallowed by the rain. Only then did Evelyn understand. They had not brought her here. They had left her here.